This is VOCM Open Line. Call 709-273-5211 or 1-888-590-8626. The views and opinions of this program are not necessarily those of this station. The biggest conversation in Newfoundland and Labrador starts now. Here's VOCM Open Line host Paddy Daly.
Well, all right, and good morning to you. Thank you very much for tuning into the program. It's Monday, October the 20th. This is Open Line. I'm your host, Paddy Daly. David Williams, he's produced the program. You'll be speaking with David when you pick up the phone to give us a call to get in the queue and on the air. If you're in the St. John's metro region, the number to dial is 709-273-5211. Elsewhere, toll-free long distance, 1-888-590-VOCM, which is 8626. So imagine some bleary-eyed Toronto Blue Jays fans out there. Man, the excitement is just fabulous. You know, looking for a little bit of an escape from all of the traumatic, down-in-the-mouth issues that we deal with and talk about and hear about all the time. But the country seems to be rallying behind the Jays. Even casual Blue Jays fans now are all in, and it's pretty great. Win Game 6 last night, 6-2, couple of long balls. I see a sign in the stands, Labrador loves Vladdy, which I thought was pretty cool. And Guerrero last night with the 6th postseason home run. That ties Joe Carter and Jose Bautista for the most ever in a Jays postseason. And Bautista threw out the first pitch. And how about this Savage kid? 23 years old. His rookie year is next year. You know, it was 5 2/3, and yes, he put some guys on base last night, but when he needed a ground ball, there's the ground ball. 3 straight innings to thwart the Seattle threat with double plays. So off we go to Game 7 this evening. Here we go. And just for a second, you know, it's easy enough to marvel at Shohei Ohtani. Now, his $700 million contract is wild, but it's reported by the LA Times that the Dodgers have actually recouped all $700 million with television contracts in Japan, merch sales in Japan, and all the rest. So, and then in Game 4 against the Brewers. So he's the starting pitcher and the DH. So there's only 12 hitters who have ever hit 3 home runs in a postseason game. There's only 26 pitchers who have ever recorded 10-plus strikeouts, 2 or less hits, and no runs in a postseason start. Ohtani did both in the same game. 3 for 3 with 3 home runs. He was throwing seeds out there 100 miles an hour. I mean, it's probably the single greatest postseason performance in Major League Baseball history. I think there's a fair argument to be made for that. And yeah, here we go. Dodgers, maybe the Blue Jays face the Dodgers in the series. A quick mention on the tennis front. Great weekend for Canadian professional tennis. Leila Annie Fernandez won the Japan Open, and then Felix Auger-Aliassime won the European Open Championship. So brilliant stuff for them. Okay. Back in 2023, I heard rumblings about this story. I didn't know if they were true. And people were telling me, did you hear this story about he got into an accident on the highway because the part of the car that was being held together by zip ties let go? And apparently it's absolutely true. So this guy, Travis Jones, he brought his car into Canadian Tire in Clarenville for a routine oil change. This is back in May of 2023. He's driving a 2017 Honda Civic. So apparently, you know, what did they call the edge and splash pad had been taken away, apparently fairly routine removal to do an oil change, but they didn't have the metal bolts to reconnect it, and consequently, they just put it back together with plastic zip ties. Now, apparently this is relatively common. It shouldn't be, but apparently it is. The real trick here is, at highway speed, it let go. When he took his vehicle from the Canadian Tire, he thought there's something wrong here. You know, the car is shaking and is having a hard time getting up to highway speed, and then lo and behold, into the future, it fully lets go, and there's a problem. Number one, for a mechanic and or a garage, regardless of where or who or what company, to not tell the person who owns the car who's going to take it on the highway that, oh, by the way, the metal bolts were unavailable and this is a temporary solution. We suggest you don't take it on the highway until we get the bolts in so we can fix the job. Nope, didn't tell him anything. And lo and behold, this is the outcome. What is going to be the actual repercussions for the company and or the mechanics who were involved in putting the plastic zip ties on one of the key structural parts of a vehicle is mind-boggling. I mean, what do we have to do as consumers? Do we have to be asking at the counter when we get our keys, hey, is there anything else I need to know? Were all the appropriate parts reinstalled in my vehicle? Is it safe to take it on the highway? Do I have to come back get the wheels retorqued? Are you using plastic zip ties? I mean, it's a wild story, but apparently very, very real. And Mr. Jones, if you'd like to join us here on the program, let's take it on. But boy, oh boy, like they say in life, you need a good accountant and a good mechanic that you can trust. But zip ties, eh? and didn't tell him. Amazing stuff. All right, a couple other ones where I'm not even really sure what to say, but we've been talking about legislation that's coming, and we'll dig into a bit later about harsher sentences and reverse onus for bail conditions and what have you. And I don't know this woman, and I hold no malice against her. And it's a lady from Parsons Cove or Parsons Pond, is she? All right. Neela Blanchard. So she struck and killed a teenager, dangerous driving, causing the death. And the sentence was now handed down. 2 years less a day of house arrest. So when we talk about the sentence matching the crime, even the lawyer for Miss Blanchard was thinking 50-50, she's going to spend some time in prison. But no, spending time at home for a couple of years less a day. There's a teenager dead. So these conversations, because sometimes we just hang our hat on what we see as repeat offenders and violent criminals, but still, the sentence matching the crime is still a pretty legitimate conversation in this country. And we'll talk more about that a little later in the program, because there is new legislation coming. But man, oh man. And then more scams. You almost get sick of talking about it. We've arrived at a point where it's hard to trust almost anything you see, which is really dangerous, and it's extremely frustrating. But now for folks in the city of St. John's, well, I guess anybody who may have possibly been in St. John's, maybe parked their vehicle in St. John's, there's another scam going around from a fraudulent website. It says on it, pay now. So you're being told that you have an outstanding parking ticket. It's a text scam. An outstanding parking ticket, looking for a huge payment, and the parking ticket doesn't exist. Just ignore it. That's not how it works anyway. But the folks who are on the other end of these scams, I mean, what's the right word? I mean, they're nuisances or they're evil, but they're obviously criminals. But if you get that text saying that you owe money for a parking ticket, just ignore it in full. Don't do anything. Don't panic. Don't share any information. Okay. Because normally we would get, tickets in the mail, and we could put our ticket in the mail to say that we'd like to challenge it. What's the future Canada Post looks like? What does it look like? Look, it's unsustainable with the current track it's on, financially speaking. And I'm not so sure we're at the moment in time with decisions like they've made in Denmark. So Post Nord, which is Danish postal service, at the end of this year, they're stopping letter delivery, period, just to focus in on packages. All right, so the numbers are obviously pretty clear when we talk about over the course of the last 20 years. In Canada, the volume of mail has decreased from 5.5 billion letters to 2 billion letters over the last 20 years. That's a 60% decline, and doesn't look like there's any going back. In Denmark, the decline has been more steep, 90% drop over roughly the same time period. Now, I'm not hoping that anybody loses jobs and Canada Post is completely restructured from top to bottom and people are out of work, what have you. But at some point, even Cup W, and they've got some suggestions out there, and yes, they're not wrong to point the finger of blame at leadership of Canada Post that blew what were significant revenues in things that the workers deemed to be not required. Certainly not essential for the day-to-day operations at Canada Post, but in Denmark, no more letter delivery by the end of the year. Okay. Post-election, where to now? I'm not sure exactly when the new government gets sworn in, the PC majority government. And yes, people talk about ministers getting a chance to familiarize themselves with the new portfolios, even though some of them would have been shadow ministers, now to be into the official minister's chair. But time's important here. The questions about where's all the money coming from, they're not unfair. Because both of the top parties were making some pretty significant promises here with money we don't have. Then apparently, let's see, VOCM, I don't generally refer to the question today, but here it is today. Do you think the provincial government should keep giving a return to balanced budget date? It sounds great, right? It does. Living within your means, not overspending. But let's think about it in real terms. This year's deficit, which includes all the big tobacco money, $626 million. $4.1 billion in borrowing. Austerity has proven to be bad for individuals, bad for the economy, bad overall. But some sort of strategy to deal with debt, you hear me going on about it all the time because people talk about what kind of world, what kind of province we're going to leave for our grandchildren. Well, to leave them a staggering liability of some $50 billion sounds like a terrible plan. And more specifically, I went to the rugby game on Saturday afternoon and just out and about. And I'm not surprised, but one of the most common questions or conversations people engage with me in is about the Upper Churchill. I think it's fair to say that the complexities and the intricacies of $500 billion worth of MOU is not that easy to understand for most. I get that. And, people with busy lives, maybe not doing a whole lot to dig into that particular topic, but it's massive and has decades-long implications here if and when we ever get to some sort of definitive agreements. So now that Mr. Wakeham is the Premier designate, I think it's important if we get a few more details about what exactly the plan is. An independent review, I think to a man, to a woman, people think that's a good idea, including me, because there's just too much on the line here. So I get that. But what does that look like? And what's the timeline associated with that? And then the bigger question, and I don't think you can walk this back at this point, is the binding referendum. A few basic questions about it is, what exactly will we be asking people? Because at this point we have a non-binding MOU in place. Is the question, do we proceed? Is the question, do we shelve it? Is the question, do we not consider the April so-called deadline of 2026? Like, what exactly are we going to be asking anybody? And even with an independent review, and even with the possibility, or I guess the pending referendum, will the province continue to negotiate with the province of Quebec, or what exactly is going on here? And I don't think it's unfair to ask some of those questions, because this is not about familiarizing yourself with the actual holding of the seat of government versus the opposition. These are pretty significant pledges made on the campaign trail, and he stuck by them the entire way through. So what does that even mean? And what are we actually asking anybody? And whether or not you think a referendum is a good idea, and I've been blasted from stem to stern by saying I don't think it's a good idea, but if you want to bring your perspective forward here this morning, let's absolutely talk about it, because the more we talk about it, hopefully it leads to a better understanding, even though that's not always the case. All right, let's keep going here. So today, appearing in court, are the 3 women charged with obstruction of justice, resisting arrest, and this is the protest in the parking lot of the Confederation building in the boat. And this was all protesting the onshore wind proposals. You know the deal. Wind to hydrogen, ammonia for export. No markets have been secured. Very little action on either of those. I think, 5 or 6 proposals and proponents here talking about the possibility for the green hydrogen industry. All right. So one thing, and if you'd like to talk about the charges and or the proposals inside that industry, we can do it. They also have a petition out there and some pretty public pleas looking for political intervention, looking for the Premier to see that the charges are dropped and the court proceedings are stayed. Look, if I was charged with something and I thought it was completely unfair, and let's add the context. They did indeed do the legwork here. They spoke with security, they spoke with law enforcement about whether or not it was going to be okay to protest in that form, in that fashion, at that time about this issue. And then they get arrested. Do we think that we want politicians that directly involved in the court system? Because it's not just about this. I always think that it's a pretty bad idea in the middle of court proceedings for politicians to chime in on it, whatever case, whatever outcome. After the verdict is read, whatever the verdict may be, until all of the timeline associated with appeals has gone by the wayside, politicians really should stay out of it. And that's from all stripes on all issues. I just don't think having politicians directly involved in calling issues in front of the court to see them dropped or to make much in the way of commentary. And let's just add another layer of context. They can't have it both ways. You can't have politicians, when asked about things that are in the court, say, well, I can't comment on that because it's in the courts, which is the right thing to say. But at the exact same time, do we really want politicians? And this is not about these 3 women. This is about the issue in the bigger scheme of things. Do we think that it's a good idea if the Premier or the Prime Minister or anybody in political leadership gets directly involved with that type of affair? And then we can add to the conversation about SNC-Lavalin and the ethics violation that was Trudeau, who should have 100% stayed out of it, but didn't. And now there's calls for treason and lock them up and all that stuff. And we can take that on if you're so inclined. But, specifically about politicians getting involved at this level on issues like this in front of the court. Because, again, you can't have it both ways. Can't comment in front of the courts. And then asking for the Premier to see those charges dropped. I don't know. What do you think? You want to talk about it? we can do it. And on that front, so we're anticipating legislation now regarding harsher sentences coming from the federal government, reverse onus on bail, as opposed to the Crown trying to speak their case as to whether or not bail should be denied, now to put it on the defendant to prove that they deserve to be out on bail with whatever associated conditions. So the devil's in the details. You know, we can talk about it high level, but until we see it and people who really understand the system can offer some commentary to help us understand exactly what's being proposed, not sure what to do. And there's border security legislation coming this week. Look, protecting the border from contraband and undocumented peoples and drugs and guns getting into the country, we should absolutely be doing a better job. But it's kind of being put forward as if we're doing things to help the Americans. Look, of course, they're our partners. We share the largest, longest, most unmilitarized border in the world. And used to be very reliable partners. Of course, that's gone by the wayside. But anyway, so that measure is coming. Then we'll ask about issues regarding updates on trade. And not much has been achieved since. But as reported in the Wall Street Journal, the United States is rolling back tariffs on, quote, products that cannot be grown, mined, or naturally produced in the United States. So basically admitting that using a sledgehammer instead of a scalpel was a dumb idea. You know, if you can't grow enough bananas or coffee or avocados or whatever it is that people want in the United States, basically just unnecessarily made it more expensive for importers and then consequently consumers. And then the thought is, oh, well, there the tariffs are gone, so we'll see the prices come back to earth. No, you won't. I mean, the companies that are enjoying increased profits, what's the likelihood of nameless, faceless corporations all of a sudden saying, oh, well, I don't have to pay the tariff. Now your coffee is 15 or 25% cheaper. Don't hold your breath. So a trade deal update from this country would be great. Now, I do know there's been more trade with different countries around the world that we've seen some surge. South Korea, softwood lumber exports to Japan, absolutely skyrocketing. But, you know, the unnecessary, based on nothing, tariff trade war that we're involved in here is ridiculous. And, you know, people say, what about the elbows up, Mr. Carney, and dropping all the reciprocal tariffs? Look, basically what people are asking for is to pay more. Why do we want that? You know, the American self-inflicted wound, I think, is a pretty serious case study in how they actually work and what the actual economic outcomes were. So they're going to drop tariffs on everything that is grown or cannot be grown, mined, or naturally produced in the United States. But that doesn't let us off the hook, as we are all, unfortunately, aware. How are we doing out there this morning, Dave? Let's get it going here. A couple of quick ones before we get to you. Oh, and for snowbirds making their way for their 6-month, less a day trip to the United States to weather the winter, new rules in place. They have been since April, but of course this is around when snowbirds start to make their southerly trek. At this stage here, and confusion reigns supreme on the border. But now the possibility for you to be fingerprinted and photographed and searched from top to bottom, from stem to stern, is new. If you're going to be staying in the States for any longer than 29 days, you are indeed potentially facing this type of additional layer of, security. The biggest issue that you hear reported by snowbirds who are just making their way into the States is that everything's at the border security agent's discretion. So one RV with 2 Canadian travelers who have been setting up shop in the United States for the last 10 years now face this. But they might not, because not every border security agent even knows what's required. And that's been widely reported. So if you're a snowbird, maybe, just maybe, speak with people at the highest levels of security and border travel about what to expect. Cost and time and things like being fingerprinted and photographed just for the purpose of entering to make your way to Phoenix or to make your way to Sarasota or wherever you're going. All right, last one before we get to. You know, we should and can talk about some of the things regarding addiction services and mental health related matters, of which we do not pay enough attention to it here in this province. Maybe on a better path than we have been 10 years ago, but we don't do enough. Now the Atlantic lottery numbers are in. Boy, oh boy. This province spent more on the lottery per capita than any other Atlantic province. And many of this would be, of course, people who have a problem with gambling. All right, according to the corporation, the Atlantic Lotto Corp, profits for this province jumped from $147 million to $153 million in 24-25 compared to the last year. Online casino and slot games, significant growth across all 4 provinces, and in this province, a major factor for the jump. Newfoundlanders and Labradorians spent $118 million at the VLTs. And look, some people are able to do a variety of things like drink and smoke and use cannabis and gamble and what have you in moderation, and it doesn't get away from them. But they're the exception, not the rule. So gambling kind of gets left by the wayside here. And look, this is only Atlantic Lotto numbers. This doesn't encapsulate all the monies gambled in the province. And look, I'm not looking down my nose. I'm in a hockey pool, right? I don't mind throwing in my whatever amount of money to get in a season-long hockey pool, but gambling sort of gets left out when we talk about some of the addictions. But of course, it can ruin you and your family and, of course, your finances. And I'm not judging because I've gambled in the past. We're on Twitter. We're VOCM Open Line. Follow us there. Email address is openline@vocm.com. When we come back, let's have a great show to kick off the week. There's only one way that can happen. You know it. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Well, I said this man's name in the preamble and he joined us on line number 2. And as I said, back in 2023, when I heard rumbles that there was a serious issue on a highway where a car had lost control because a crucial piece of equipment was being held together by plastic zip ties, I didn't know if I believed it or not. Joining us on line number 2 is Travis Jones. Morning, Travis. You're on the air.
Paddy, my friend, it's nice to speak with you again today.
I'm happy to have you on the program. So just take us back to you pull into the Canadian Tire in Clarenville, and then what?
So I went in, Paddy, because I had purchased some tires online and I was due for an oil change. And I had my oil change completed. They gave me my keys, told me I was ready to go. And I went onto the highway to drive myself back home. And it was very immediately after I was trying to gain highway speed that the car was shaking and dragging. It was almost like it was a force pushing the car backwards. So after that, I coasted the car back to Canadian Tire. And I told them something was wrong with the car, and they put it back up on the lift. And within a couple of minutes later, Paddy, they came and got me and told me again that I was ready to go. I walked toward the door, and then I spun around in my boots, and I went back and approached the gentleman who had worked on my car. And I said, "So what exactly happened? Yeah, what did you do to fix it?" And Paddy, they reluctantly told me that they had used plastic zip ties to refasten this underbody to my car. So I got home that day and still shooken, but I got my composure, Paddy, and I called corporate for Canadian Tire. The corporates had took some time to get back to me. But Paddy, between contacting corporate, it was May month, and it was November of 2023 when their plastic zip ties had failed. And the underbody then again dug into the pavement on the highway, going at highway speeds, and Paddy, I went out over the highway embankment.
It's a remarkable story. So, and then when I read down through it, and they're talking about people who are industry watchers and saying that this is surprisingly common, which I think is a cautionary tale for everyone who interacts with any garage or any mechanic. I guess we're going to have to start asking questions that would never even come to mind, right? About, is the vehicle highway safe? Is there anything I need to know? Did you use plastic zip ties? Blah, blah, blah. Do I need to come back to get my tires retorqued? Anything like that, which the onus should be on them to tell us what we need to know, as opposed to just crossing fingers and hoping for the best. So now that we are at this point in time, Travis, like, what's going on? I know it's been captured by Go Public and now we're talking about it, but what's the case with Canadian Tire and where do we stand?
Well, Paddy, it all come back out into the media, I believe, in April month of this year, after the Majot family of Gander had another scary safety-related incident after they had their vehicle serviced at the Gander Canadian Tire location. As her husband, and her young children were in the back seat when their incident happened, and I told myself, I can't let this happen again. It was at that point that the Telegram software had wrote about both of our incidents, and, Paddy, it was potentially fatal. Transport Canada has done a report that said it was maintenance related, that the issue is like the result of servicing action, not a factory defect. So since then, Paddy, Canadian Tire has not gotten in contact with me. They had told CBC that they were indeed open to, a conclusion to this, but I've not heard from that crowd. And honestly, Paddy, what can they say? My life was at risk, and it could have been potentially fatal.
Yeah, and I initially, like I've said a couple times this morning, when I first heard rumblings about the story, I thought, that can't be true. And obviously painfully true, and no one knows that better than you, Travis. So what are you going to do here? Have you had some advice from a lawyer, or is this just going to be one of these things where you've run up against a brick wall, or what's next?
Well, Patty, dealing with that corporation, it was like a brick wall. I can honestly call it almost like dealing with a mafia. I had to put in complaints with the Canadian Privacy Commissioner in order to get the call records and the emails. There were 20 plus call recordings, and when they did send me the Privacy Act package, they actually, Patty, withheld 6 key recordings from that package. So what's going to happen next, Patty, is I am absolutely taking these gentlemen to court. You know, it is a slow process. I was able to obtain that report from Transport Canada, and Patty, it will be before a judge.
As it should be, and exactly where it belongs. So do we have timelines for this, or you're just at the beginning of this judicial process?
I don't have a timeline for anything, Patty. I mean, I thought it would be concluded much sooner than, today's date, but when it gets concluded, you'll be the first call I make. And
I appreciate that. Thanks for doing this morning, Travis.
Thanks for your time, Patty.
Good luck. My pleasure. Bye-bye. I mean... But, and that's not just necessarily about Travis and his concerns, which are completely legitimate, obviously, is that's where we are. It's big guy, little guy stuff, right? So when you have to want to take government to task, whether it be in the courts or otherwise, and big corporations, they've got the horsepower, the time, the money to make it extremely slow, maybe wait you out, maybe with the financial pressures and or time or whatever the case may be, because it's a story as old as time. We try to see the justice system, whether it be criminal or civil, try to make it fair and accessible as best possible, but we're always going to be up against that nature, small versus big, the corporation, government, and otherwise. And it shouldn't be that way. It's just painful. Let's see here. Let's take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk about medical transportation. There's a caller in the queue to talk about long-term care, and then you don't go away. Welcome back. Let's go to line number 1. Good morning, Donna. You're on the air.
Yes, good morning, Patty. Thank you for taking my call.
No problem.
I'm talking about medical transportation now. I live in Marystown now. I used to be living in St. John's, but when we have appointments, we have to go back and forth, I have appointment at St. Clair's on the 29th at 9:30 in the morning. So I don't drive, so I would normally have to get a taxi in. Okay, just because the taxi goes in and comes out the same day. This is the email I received. I'm seeing your request for appointment on the October 29th. The shared taxi won't be an issue, but I'm unable to provide meals and accommodations, but a written note from a doctor's office that the appointment is unable to be moved and won't be fit into the shared taxi schedule. If you could get them to fax, email a note on your behalf, we can make it happen, but we need it in writing from a doctor's office. What world are they living in? Like, you got a job to get an appointment with a doctor. You'll only get the doctor to send the medical transportation just because you don't want to pay for $45 a night for your accommodations, like I would stay at my sister's and, for your meal. But anyway, I phoned today, and I said, I don't care about the $45. I'll stay with my sister anyway. But I said, what's the? I said, does this provincial government run this? She said, yes. I said, well, you know what? Everybody else could come in and get rooms and meals, and I can't get one for one night. So, where is the logic in all this? I'd just like to know. All right, I'm pissed.
So, I understand what your concern is here. So, yeah. How should it work? What are you suggesting?
I guess they just want you to try to get a time so that you could go in and get the taxi and come out the same day. Some appointments don't work that way. So I would have to go in a day early. And because the taxis would not be in there next morning at 9:30 in the morning. So anyway, I just poison with it all. I don't care about $45, but I'm sure there's more people in this boat that is doing this same thing. You got to try to get in and get out the same day, or if not, you need a note from the doctor saying that this appointment can be changed to another time. So I just don't know. You got a job to get to see a doctor alone for them write a note stating they can't change the appointment time. Anyway, I just, That's my bit for today.
I'm glad you called, Donna, because, for individuals, it's hard enough to get an appointment. It's hard enough to get all the appointments you need in a tight time frame so that you can, spend as little as possible for transportation and lodgings and food, what have you. Yeah. But through no fault of our own. I mean, we're at the mercy of the system. And the system is in pretty serious straits these days. So, some of the rules are just a little bit too stringent because we can't make things happen just to our own hopeful schedules. It's just not how it works.
No, and it needs to be looked at. Like, my, come on. Like, some people would go in for something they need done. They probably wouldn't feel well enough to come out the same day. But I guess this is with their system. This is what's stating, and. But I said, maybe there's other people, going through this too. I don't know, but I just wanted to put it out there.
I'm glad you did, Don. Appreciate your time.
Right. Thank you, Patty.
No problem at all. Bye-bye.
Have a good one.
You
Bye-bye.
too. Bye. Yeah, look, and for the folks who are administering the travel program, subsidies, what have you, they're just dealing with what they have. Right, they don't have the authority to make on-the-fly decisions about, let's accommodate this or that, because they don't have a whole lot of discretion available to them. The parameters are set, and they simply deliver based on the rules that are in place. But a little bit of flexibility, and I don't even know who that flexibility should be afforded to insofar as decision-making on a day-to-day basis. But we all can't, fit neatly into some of these programs because it's tricky enough to get into the system. I think once people are in the system, probably works pretty well. Lots of really kind-hearted, trained, experienced healthcare professionals. But that doesn't mean that we can't try to find a tweak so that it's a little bit easier once you finally are able to get the care you need. Let's go to line number 3. Caller, you're on the air.
Oh, good morning.
Good morning.
Yes, I want to bring up the issue of long-term care, especially since there are such scathing reports out there, such as the AGA report. And I'm speaking from my experience as a professional health worker, from my lived experience, and as a long-term advocate for the frail elderly, who at this time do not have a voice. And to me, the most effective way the provincial government could make any improvements in the dismal long-term care issue is to put in place an independent health advocate authority. That's the only way that I can see that, especially on an individual level, that you will see any improvement. Because this authority would address the concerns of seniors and their relatives on a timely basis, identifying wrongdoing, ensuring accountability. In this way, the flaws within the system would be corrected, starting from the bottom up. The scathing AG report, which independently identified horrific issues, and even possibly, I think it was criminal action I think that was suggested, looking at some of the things that the AG report found. There's such a need for such an investigative body, immediately to address things now on a daily basis, and if long-term care. There is no organization, there is nothing out there now to help a person, either the relative or the poor resident, because the poor resident, is intimidated enough. And I'll just mention, just one thing going on in the different sectors, the personal care homes, and during the past election, when I was speaking to those running, I would ask them, are you aware that the personal care homes are not required to have any trained staff? And everyone said no. To me, that's terrible. The residents are elderly, frail, and deserve to have trained staff. to identify the symptoms of illnesses that are so common within the elderly person. And I just can't understand how this is allowed to continue. They get away with it by saying that seniors in personal care homes only require assistance with activities of daily living. But that is so, it's so wrong. I mean, you could look at, all other target groups have some kind of professional help. Preschool children, they're required to have specialized people looking after them. To me, like housing all these elderly people, and I don't think I'm exaggerating it that much to say that it's no more than senior ghettos. I'm appalled at it. And anyone I speak to, well, they are too. And they say, well, no, that can't be true. Well, it is true. And then now the past provincial government, they were talking about aging in place, which really sounds good. Keeping the elderly at home, but that's only good if they're safe. And like everyone is talking about the increased violence in society, the increased crime rate, senior abuse, scams. But I have not heard one person suggest that within the circle of care for the vulnerable, that they're saying that they're going to age in place safely at home. There's not one will suggest that within that care plan to include, like, at least having the local police involved. I mean, at least have leave the seniors with a direct number to call the police, or advising police that within the community, there are vulnerable people.
And they're being taken advantage of. I mean, like, we've had stories of people who have been hired to work in care home settings, and they said they were nurses. Turned out they weren't. I mean, we can't have people with faked credentials working with vulnerable people, number one. Secondly, some of the violence is perpetrated by staff, but some of it is resident on resident, which brings us back to qualified, trained, and enough of them. I mean, the ratio of staff to resident is probably not where it needs to be. And that's something we've been talking about for quite a long time here. And when the Auditor General brings forward these reports, it's becoming very tiresome to me that when we'll hear from whatever government and successive governments, we understand and we appreciate it, we'll implement the recommendations, yet things don't change dramatically. And when you mention, police intervention, if someone is sexually assaulted, that's not an operational shortcoming, that's a crime.
Well, the thing is, and neighbors. I mean, I know seniors at home and pre-dementia, robbed blind. And there is and they're not even discussing this in when they're talking about aging in place. So, like, before that goes in place, at least have the conversation and at least have some steps so that when this happens and you take it further, at least the community and the police and the court system is aware of what is going on. Because right now they just seem to, I don't know if they're too busy, if they don't care, or whatever it is, but it's permeating like through the whole community. And even when you look at the nursing home, there's an increasingly deteriorating, the care is, there's a creeping neglect, abuse, and staff incompetency that exists throughout the system. Like, how appalling is it to hear, after numerous falls of your resident, to hear from from the home and administration and the staff that the residence has a right to follow. I mean, it is like you. I don't know if it's just. I don't know. Maybe people don't want to look at it, but this independent advocacy body would at least have the authority, and even in the nursing homes. The Adult Protection Act, which is supposedly there to protect seniors, I mean, it can be maliciously implemented by staff, and due to the confidentiality that's into that act, it protects the abuse of staff. And there's no accountability, and no one seems to have the authority to even do a quality review of it. You go to I don't know what they're called now, because Social Services Department is always changing its name, and you wonder why they're doing that. But anyway, you go to them who's supposed to have the authority to look into the Adult Protection Act, and they only have the authority to look at the protective aspects of the act. And that translates into timelines. They apparently do not have the authority to go into the institution to look at and investigate the act that supposedly triggered the AP Act. I mean, it's unbelievable. You go there, so then you turn to the healthcare system, and the Department of Health won't even answer you, and then the institution will tell you, they don't have the authority to investigate the AP Act. So there is no organization out there to investigate a malicious AP Act that's implemented within the long-term care sector. Now, if there was a body that had the authority to go into that and look at it, okay, they would be able to identify the wrongdoing and get some accountability and start changing the system from the bottom up. Then at least the public would at least get some help. There's, the health system is complicated as it is, and the public. How is the public that knows nothing about the healthcare system, how it works? I mean. But it's only someone who has some kind of an idea of how to keep requesting some kind of quality reviews of what is happening that has any hope at all. And even then, there's no answers. Like, there is not one organization out there. Patty, the only one that anyone can talk to is you. And I'm sure it's not in your mandate to go and investigate anything, and that's not what I'm saying, that you should. But the point is that, like, the public should be demanding this investigative body, because it's a strange world out there, and I mean, and this can be so bad that people have taken their loved ones out because it was so unsafe and the care was so atrocious. Their relative was getting worse, and the only way to get them into safety was to get them out of the institution. No, I mean, this day and age, Patty, it's to me, I think you have to start at the bottom. And now there was, and I don't have her, the seniors advocate. I mean, that does nothing for anybody on an individual basis, and it's sad that government does have money, and everywhere you turn there seems to be a seniors group or something. But seniors NL, they don't have the mandate to advocate on an individual basis. And, you know, there has to be an independent health advocacy, and there has to be health people involved there. Social workers do not understand the health component in the system, and time again, that has been proven. So, to me, and this wouldn't take the present government. Hopefully, they'll get something in place to address people's concerns at least, and look at really are the seniors agencies that they are funding. To some degree, they fund, I think, most all of them to some degree. And maybe put it together to help individuals work their way through the system and get answers.
I totally understand, and for the most part, agree in full. I'm late for my break, but I really appreciate you making time for the show.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
For listening.
Take care. Bye-bye. All right, let's get that break in. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Just a quick clarification, as I was questioned via email about the thoughts I had about snowbirds, what to expect at the border if you're making your way from Canada to the United States to winter. And someone wrote to say that's always been the case. No, things changed in April. Legislatively speaking, there is absolutely change what people can anticipate or expect at the border. There's always been the potential to be searched and questioned and to fill out the appropriate paperwork, but there's different layers of rules entering the States. Not because I say so, because the actual American government and the border services in the United States say exactly the same thing. So I guess I was asked as to why I'm saying that there's confusion. Well, apparently there is. You know, if not every single person come from Canada to the United States is fingerprinted and photographed, goes through the exact same ordeal, filling out the exact same paperwork, given the exact same timelines, that means there's confusion. If they're given discretion, look, discretion is there for obvious reasons, but if people are told two different things and upon arriving at the border found out they were given bogus information by the American Border Control, then that's where confusion is. So all I was mentioning is that snowbirds, maybe it's a good idea to find out exactly what to expect and the accurate information before you're caught at the border ill-prepared without the appropriate paperwork, and whether or not you can actually register at the border, or there's something that you should be doing in advance of your trip to the United States. That's all. And you can't say that nothing's changed, because it did change, and it changed in April. It's just now where these snowbirds are starting to make their way into the States that we're hearing these stories being told. Let's go ahead and take a break here. Well, those of you in the queue, you stay right there. We'll get to you right after this. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go. Line number 4. Gary, you're on the air.
Good morning, Patty. Are you ready? Are you ready for tonight, Patty? I'm so excited about the Blue Jays. Well, man, they went to Seattle just to get back to Toronto, and they forced the 7th game, and so many things last night's game. I mean, I can't describe it all, but Hazel May said to Vladdy, "Are you ready?" And Vladdy said to the rest of us, "Are you ready?" So are you ready, Patty?
Yeah, I think so. As people know who have to put up with me and listen to me, I watch a lot of baseball. I always have, and it's been a long time since the Jays even had a sniff at this type of success. So, yeah, I'm ready to go. And I'm not one of those live and die. If they lose tonight, I'll be disappointed, but I'll get up and go to work tomorrow. If they win tonight, I'll be thrilled. So I just find it really exciting, to be honest. And the crowd. A couple of my buddies were at the game last night. I hate being jealous of people who do things that I wish I was doing, but I was pretty jealous last night of the boys sitting right behind home plate.
Oh, man. There's so much happening last night. It was a complete team win last night, because the defense last night, three innings in a row, the double plays, and holy mackerel, the infield is solid. It's rock solid. They got a solid infield, and to get to the home run hitter from the home run hitter. There's 2 first basemen in the game last night. They're both from Canada. They both hit home runs, one for each team. Josh Nader, he's from Mississauga, and Vladimir Guerrero, he's from Canada too. So, you know, our Canadian baseball team is going to look pretty good when you have those 2 playing on the same team for the World Cup of Baseball when they play that. So that's exciting news too. But you know what? I'm so thankful that we had a chance to talk about the Blue Jays throughout the summer and to now. And I remember the first time I said, you know, if the Blue Jays do good, we're enjoying the gravy part of this journey now. This is the gravy train is just about, if they can make it to the World Series, that would be so wonderful. I think the whole of Canada would be jumping for so much joy right across Canada, and that would be wonderful because, I mean, even in my home here, everybody who talked about the Blue Jays this morning, they're all talking about the Blue Jays, and I thought, well, isn't that something? Got some excitement back into some people's lives, you know, because you talk about, because you show, like the one day says, you're the voice of a lot of people, you know, you listen to a lot of the heartaches and stuff all the time, you know, and that's important to share those stories too. But sometimes we all need to break away from all the tragedies of life just to have a little excitement and joy and happiness in our life. So I want to thank you for allowing me to share my joy with everybody too. And Newfoundland, go Jays, go!
Absolutely. Thanks a lot, Gary. Enjoy the game tonight.
Okay, thanks, Daddy. Bye now.
Bye-bye. And here's Sarah Strickland, who's a big Jays fan, I have to say. And like she said in conversation with Russell Bauer this morning, she wasn't alive when they won in 93. So, I mean, for the younger Blue Jays fans, you know, 2015, first time back in the playoffs since 93 when they won back-to-back World Series. It was exciting in 15 and 16, but this is different. Now, those teams back then, I really thought they were outstanding teams and had a chance to win. But I was going to say, for better or worse, plenty old enough to remember Joe Carter. And I mean, Vladdy now with 6 postseason home runs, tied with Carter and Jose Bautista, and hopefully he breaks that record tonight. It'd be a thrill. I have no idea where I'm going. Dave, you want to point me to one particular call or another? I know where I'm going. Going to line number 3 and say good morning to the Executive Director at the Cathedral Basilica Foundation. That's Maria Conkey. Good morning, Maria. You're on the air.
Hello, Patty. Thank you so much for having me.
Happy to have you on. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you. Glad to be here. So I'm privileged to be the executive director of the Cathedral Basilica Foundation of Newfoundland and Labrador. And some listeners might remember us as the Basilica Heritage Foundation. So I wanted to share that our name has changed, and so has our role. We're not just about preserving a historic building anymore. We're the stewards of an entire community space that we call the Basilica Block. So in April 2024, we officially became the owners of the Basilica and the surrounding properties. So now we're not just supporting heritage, we're responsible for it, you know, the physical, financial, and cultural care of this extraordinary site. So we've launched a new logo inspired by stained glass, and we're positioning the foundation not just as a heritage steward, but as hopefully a cultural catalyst for the city. So we have lots of exciting things coming up that I was hoping to share with you, Patty.
I mean, people long just considered the Basilica a place for mass, and it was a religious institution. But if you get down to the brass tacks, the artifacts, the artwork, the history makes the mandate much broader today, and thankfully so. So when you start about that type of cultural protection, how should people listen to the program this morning hear that? And what should they understand about that?
Well, great point, Patty. And I think I've only come into this role since July, but what I've learned is that everyone has a Basilica story. Everyone has some kind of connection, whether it's their family were the, stonemasons back in 1855, or whether they are art enthusiasts and appreciate the sculpture and the paintings and the work here in the Basilica, or they are musicians. And as you may know, the space is one of the best performance spaces for, the NSO and choirs throughout the city. And so there is so much more to explore here, in addition to being now a vibrant parish community. So there's a connection that everyone seems to have to this space. And once you start diving deep into the history and the beauty and the artifacts and the books that are here, it's a really, really incredible testament to the people of Newfoundland and Labrador who built this place.
No question. This might be a bit of a silly question, but give us an idea about the geographical footprint we're talking about inside the Cathedral Basilica Foundation. Like, for instance, does Straza's The Veiled Virgin at the Presentation Common fall into your footprint?
Great question. That is actually not under our roof, but as one of our partners on the Basilica block. So that is at the Presentation Sisters Convent, and that is free and open for the public to see. We're actually in the process of cataloging and archiving all of the art that we do have here and sculpture in the Cathedral Basilica itself. We are working with appraisers from across the country to really make sure what we do have is presented accordingly and safely. But in terms of the space itself, there is the tombs underneath the sanctuary itself are incredible stained glass windows and masonry work and stonework from all the way back to 1855.
So when it was under the auspices of the Roman Catholic Episcopal Corporation, their revenue stream is no longer there. So what are operational costs going to be for your foundation? How are you going to be able to support that number, whatever that number is?
Well, great question. I mean, keeping the Cathedral Basilica's doors open truly does run about, 900,000 annually, which protects our building's incredible history, the artwork, and the artifacts. So we're looking at many initiatives to keep that going. One initiative is that we have an incredible space, which is now known as the Palace Commons. It was once the Archbishop's residence, and this is an incredible heritage building that we have restored and are continuing to upgrade in order to bring tenants and community members and art organizations, musical groups into the space to find their home and to be tenants and start creating a new history as well. We also have a Friends of the Basilica campaign, which is, a way for anyone who loves this landmark to play a part in its renewal. So whether you give, $10 or $100, every contribution helps preserve the Basilica and ensures it remains a vibrant place for worship, heritage, and culture. And in my past life, Patty, I was a musician. I still am. I shouldn't say a past life. So we're launching a new concert series called the Cathedral, Basilica, and Palace Presents, which is a Sunday afternoon series that will bring these spaces to life with music and community. So all of these initiatives are ways that we are trying to both open the doors to the province and the city and make sure that we're generating the income that we need to keep this incredible space vibrant and alive.
Yeah, so you mentioned this concert series, and you said, like the Newfoundland Symphony Orchestra and choirs, whether people go to Handel's Messiah or what have you, it was a Christmas tradition.
Exactly.
What kind of access will the public have to this space, whether it be the Basilica proper or the grounds?
It will be both right now. So we are so fortunate, for, I believe, since the 1980s for the NSO to be here every December to perform Messiah. We are starting our own concert series, as I said, that will be on Sundays. The first concert is Sunday, October 26th, so coming up soon. It's called Oh Happy Day, and it's an incredible gospel celebration featuring Rob James, a new singer to the province and an incredible singer from across the country, with Evan Watt-Smith, who is a Newfoundland favorite. It's an incredible show, so it'll be uplifting, joyful, and just exactly the kind of energy we want people to feel in this space. So that is one coming up. We're going to have the Royal Newfoundland Regiment Band coming up in November for a Sunday afternoon performance, and we have more events lined up in the Palace Commons and what people might remember as the Episcopal Library in the new year as well. So there will be definitely different types of music and different types of performances as part of this concert series, hopefully ones that will appeal to everyone in one way or the other, either in the Basilica proper or, as I said, in the recital space in the Palace Commons. So trying to really open it up to a broad range of interests and I feel always like when people come to into the space, they start learning, and it means something different to every person. So if we can provide some Sunday afternoon entertainment that appeals to a wide variety of people, we know that they will see the beauty and the history here. And that's our goal.
I guess we're all just fortunate that the Basilica got such an important outdoors or outside facelift there a number of years ago, so that wasn't also on the list, because it really needed a bit of that TLC outside, and it looks tremendous now. Maria, appreciate your time. Good luck in your new role. Anything else you'd like to say this morning?
No, thank you so much for having us, Patty. If I'd like to share with your listeners, if you're interested in tickets, please call us 709-793-4411, or you can email info@basilicafoundation.ca. And again, Patty, thank you so much for having us this morning.
More than happy to have you on, Maria. Thank you.
Okay, take care.
You too. Bye-bye. All right, let's get to the break. When we come back, we're talking post-election, oversight at the care homes, the MOU, and then whatever you want to talk about. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 5. PJ, you're on the air.
Good morning, Patty.
Morning.
Good morning. I want to talk about the MOU this morning. I was hoping to get in before the election, but as it turns out, it's going to be studied now anyway. But so I think some of my comments today are still relevant. One of them has to do with Andrew Parsons. He responded to Danny Williams about why no one else is coming forward as potential suitors for this Churchill Falls Gull Island development. And I just want to quote what he said. He said, "This MOU has been in the public now for a year, and nobody else has outbid Quebec. Nobody has come forward." So that was quite ironic to hear those words, because on page 15 of the MOU, one of the sections in there talk about the term of this MOU, which is from when it was signed in December for about 16 months up until April of 2026. And of course, it can be extended if both parties agree to that. Fine and dandy. But this is the more important part of the paragraph that's there, and it's in very plain English, one of the more plainer English paragraphs in it. It says, "During that term, Newfoundland Hydro shall not discuss or enter into any agreement with any party other than Hydro-Quebec with respect to the possibility of developing hydroelectric projects at Gull Island or Churchill Falls sites." So it's right there, black and white. So even if somebody was wanting to come forward, Newfoundland Hydro's hands are handcuffed. They're not allowed to speak to anyone. I thought it was ironic that the minister responsible for bringing the MOU back to the province, along with the former premier, of course, would think that people could come forward and Newfoundland Hydro would be free and able to speak on it. So I thought that was an important point to bring forward.
Okay. Insofar as once two parties enter into an MOU, is it not pretty standard good faith practice that you don't play both sides against the middle? Before you enter into the MOU, you could be entertaining a dozen suitors, but once you arrive at that stage, is that not relatively common stuff?
Perhaps it is, but I'm just pointing out as the minister was responding, saying, "Well, nobody else has come forward in the year." They don't have. No one has an opportunity. Newfoundland Hydro doesn't have an opportunity, so his response is not really valid in my view, because there wasn't a possibility for anybody to come forward. So maybe now that we're going into a different phase of this, that this thing can be more or less flushed out and studied a bit more. The other thing I wanted to speak of today, and again, it was when you had the CEO of Newfoundland Hydro on, Jennifer Williams, you asked a very simple question about how much boring, is going to have to be done by Newfoundland in order for this development to go ahead. And you didn't get a straight answer because they want to deflect. They want to say, well, CFLCO's doing the boring. But at the end of the day, Newfoundland government is responsible for 2/3 of CFLCO, so they're responsible for 2/3 of the debt. I think up to this point in the whole process, the Liberals did not want to discuss how much was being borrowed. But doing a quick calculation of the information on our chapter site, and in conjunction with the financial modeling that's in the MOU, I've come up with a number close to $18 billion. So, I mean, that would be something that, again, could be posed to CEO of Hydro now. Really, how much borrowing is on the line here for Newfoundland? How much are they responsible? And because up to this point, they want the public to believe that all equity is being covered by this $3.5 billion they're getting. But it's simply not the case. Newfoundland is going to be on the hook for substantial billions of dollars in this. So again, it would be something that come out of the study. The other point I wanted to talk about is you mentioned, you asked about the studies that were done on the Gull Island, the evaluation potential. And Newfoundland Hydro said, yeah, we have it, but we don't want to release it because it give the upper hand to Quebec. I found it quite funny in a way, because when you look at the YouTube videos that Newfoundland Hydro has on there, they have one on there and says, what is the top risk of the MOU? And when you look at it, it's quite amazing. It says the top risk is not signing this MOU fast enough. And I don't think that is really top risk in this, and it's all under the bridge now in a way, but it's going to be studied. But it just goes to show, hopefully going forward under the new administration, that the answers are going to be a bit more forthcoming. The last point I want to talk about is our chapter. That's the website the provincial government has related to this MOU. They have a 3-page document there on just the facts, they call it, or fact sheet. I went through it. I see about 10 misleading statements, When you look at things, for example, the Churchill River capacity is going to increase by 3,900 megawatts. Yeah, that's true. But 90% of that is going to be delivered to Quebec. Quebec is getting 90% of those additional megawatts. But where it's confusing is trying to mislead the people in province is saying providing Newfoundland and Labrador Hydro with access to nearly 4 times as much electricity for use in Labrador. That is because you're going to get more electricity out of Churchill Falls number 1 plant. It's not because you're getting more out of the 3,900 expansion, which is what Newfoundland is sticking their neck out for and going into debt for. So it just found, hopefully now with this new, let's say, new study that's going to take place under the new government, is that these things can be more or less brought forward to the public and they can rely on them and hopefully use them to make decisions going forward, whether it's through the study, referendum, what have you.
PJ, do you have any thoughts on the proposed binding referendum?
Well, I think based on, looking at things with these referendum processes, both parties, if it has to come to that, will be educating their, audience. And that's what we didn't have that before. The Liberal government was not really wanting the public to know the full facts of everything. They wanted to push through, of course, but they weren't willing to do it. I think under a referendum scenario, if it has to get there, I'm not confident that it really has to get there after a study. If the study is robust enough, it may tell the tale, and nobody will have to be convinced otherwise. But if it does have to come to that, both parties typically in those referendums put a big effort into educating their specific side, and people will have a very, very well-versed information to make a decision on. So I don't see it being that problematic. At the end of the day, I think people want the Labrador developments to go ahead. I think everybody is in favor of that generally. And that if people are educated and informed, I don't think it will turn out to be that problematic.
Yeah, I have a bunch of questions about it, but If there's a referendum, like for starters, when would that be? Is it on the heels of an independent review? Would it be at that stage? And what exactly are we asking? Because if we're having a referendum on a non-binding agreement like an MOU, that really feels like cart in front of horse kind of stuff to me. If it's at the end of the process and the contracts are back in the hands of both sides to be eventually signed and debated in the House of Assembly, information shared, town halls on what the contracts say, then that's a different thing. Because again, for me, for a referendum, forget the cost, but just even the veracity of a referendum on something that is simply an agreement in principle and not a contract, I really don't know what we gain by that. But anyway, I might be in the minority there.
Yeah, my view on that, the placement for that referendum will be after, let's say, the next MOU. Let's say the next MOU comes after a study. Then that would set it up for the proper place for it. Because right now, wouldn't be any further ahead doing it now. But after the study is done, the people are formed. All questions are answered. I mean, if the government had answered questions going into this properly, thoroughly, 100%, full transparency, they'd probably still be in power. The ironic part of this. So, I mean, going forward, a referendum would have to fall after the study so that the new administration, new government knows what's happening. Newfoundland Hydro have now a new government to work with and may have different things that they are going to bring forward, and this study may turn out to provide better positioning for Newfoundland now to do the check and balances and so that we're better set up to do an MOU with Quebec. So sounds like we're on a better track now.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what political forces would have been if X, Y, or Z had to happen. But if after the press conference at the Rooms, the next announcement was, we have selected Organization X to do an additional independent review of this, the conversation would be so much different. It really would. Even though there's, the Muskrat Falls hangover, there's the distrust of Quebec hangover, we'd be entertaining a vastly different scenario here if that's what the government had to do by following LeBlanc's recommendations. PJ, appreciate your time this morning. Thanks for doing it.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
All the best. Bye-bye. All right, let's get a break in. When we come back, oversight of the care homes, and Or wants to talk about wait times that emerge. Don't go away. Welcome back to the program. Let's go to line number 4. Good morning, Jonathan. You're on the air.
Hi. Good morning, Patty. Forgive me. I'm a little bit nervous to talk about this. To be honest, I almost hung up the phone before you got here. But I'm here to talk about private care homes and assisted living facilities within the city and within the province. I have had some experience with this over the past couple of years. I'm not going to name any names, so don't worry about that. But I am sort of at the end of my rope here with what I've witnessed and what I've seen and the treatment of not only the people that work there, many of whom come from other places within the world, but the people that reside there. So my family members wound up in a private care home because one of my family members had severe Alzheimer's or has severe Alzheimer's, and the other family member was caring for that person. After a while, the person that was caring for the family member with severe Alzheimer's wound up having a massive stroke and was unable to do that, and so we had to move both of those people into a care home because there just wasn't enough care to facilitate them being at home, and the care provider who had the stroke was just unable to do anything. They were nonverbal. So we moved them into a place, and the only way we could get them together as a couple was to move them into private care. And so that's what we did, and that's how we landed there. Since that time, I have seen things that have just shocked me. And I know that there are people out there that are listening right now who have had this experience, who have family members in private care, and they are not shocked because they have seen how some of these facilities, not all, maybe, but some of these facilities operate and how residents are being treated in those facilities. And I'll give you a couple of broad examples without naming any names or anything identifiable. Recently, the home that I am familiar with, which houses well over 100 people, has cut down their nursing staff to 1. So you have a building, a private care home with over 100 rooms and 1 nurse for the entire building on staff at all times. That is not good enough. There are floors within that building that house incredibly vulnerable people with dementia, and they're a mixture and myriad of other disabilities and illnesses and ailments throughout. And, some people at home might be thinking, well, it's a private care home, it's a private business. What business does the government providing oversight? Why would they provide oversight within a private care home? Well, many people don't realize this, but the government does offer subsidies for private care homes. For individuals making less than couples making less than $150,000 a year can avail of a subsidy to offset the cost of a private care home. So the government is, in fact, putting money in the pockets of the owners of private care homes, but they have no direct oversight into what's going on outside of maybe you can check the kitchen. I wrote the Seniors Advocate recently, and they basically wrote me back and said there's nothing they can do. They have no oversight over it. Contact this person at this number. People are paying a lot of money, right? And money is one thing, but the care they're receiving is inadequate. It's in some case neglectful and negligent. And the things that I've seen with my own 2 eyes, the stories I've heard from many, many, many people, it terrifies me. And, we've just had an election where every single politician on the face of God's green earth stood up and said, seniors are important. People care about seniors. Well, you know what? Act like it. What's being done now is disgraceful, and it needs to change immediately. There needs to be oversight within these buildings to see what's going on, because these people will cut costs, find efficiencies to gain profit, and fill their pockets. And it's unacceptable. It's horrible for the people going through it within those homes, and it's just terrible for family members, because you just can't trust that they're getting the care that they need. My relative is in that building because that relative cannot fend for themselves, right? It's impossible. And yet time and time and time again, I'm learning new things. Things are happening all for the sake of profit or neglect. And there is absolutely nobody that can step in and say, hey, this is wrong, this needs to change. And I just have come to my wit's end, and I want people to talk about this because it needs to be talked about.
And I'm glad you're doing it. And we should all be doing it. Government cannot shirk its responsibility here. They can't just wash their hands of it saying that it's a private company. No, there's public dollars as part of it. And just put it this way. It's just in the recent past we came up with operational standards at the emergency shelters. I mean, for starters, we were on the wrong path with this kind of stuff. And this is a betrayal of government's responsibility. So you're right. And I'll echo exactly what you said here. There is 100% the authority inside the provincial government for any monies attached to have strict parameters associated with them. Exactly. But unfortunately, we do not.
And you know what? There's strict parameters around the most mundane things you can name in government. There are people looking at money in all kinds of angles in all different places. But the one place where lives are actually, on the line, like people, I don't know, I'm not going to speculate, but there have been there have been bad things happen to people because of this, right? And that's a guess. I don't have the data, the statistics. I know my own personal stories, and that confirms it. But I do not understand why this is allowed to continue. There are enough people with enough stories that I've heard that are, worse than mine in some cases. And every time I bring it up to the people that run these businesses, they say, oh, yes, we're going to fix it. We're going to fix it. And, of course, there's no reason for them to fix it. There's nobody saying fix it other than the person that's asking for it. Right? They can just act with impunity. And that's not right.
Absolutely not. Jonathan, you said you were nervous, but you hit it out of the park, and I really appreciate you doing it. Anything else you'd like to say this morning?
Yes. I'd like to hear from government. I'd like somebody to call in and say, hey, we weren't aware of this, or hey, we were aware of this. Like, what are you going to do? That's what I want to know. You got the job. Congratulations. This is part of the change that everybody's talking about, right? Make that change happen, and make it happen now. It's disgusting.
Good on you, Jonathan. Appreciate your time. Thanks for doing it.
Thank you, Paddy.
My pleasure. Bye-bye. There you go. I mean, we know better. It's the inaction that I think drives people around the bend. And even in the world of emergency shelters, we're the outlier here. And I'm not trying to take away from what Jonathan had to say because it was critically important, but we're just do things in a bit of a arse backwards approach sometimes. If there's going to be one iota of public money in these types of supports into the hands of the private sector, then of course there's got to be rules and parameters and oversight and regulations and monitoring, but there's not. Let's see here. Let's get a break in. When we come back, tons of time left for you. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 2. Kimberly, you're on the air.
Hello.
Hi there.
How are you?
Okay, how about you?
Oh, I'm okay. I'm calling in this morning about improper disposal of needles and drug paraphernalia. I took a walk yesterday evening to the store with my grandkids, and anyway, there was garbage bags brought in there. I was told that there was a guy brought these 2 garbage bags into our community. It's a little pathway. It's a little trail that runs down behind our houses. I'm in our Newfoundland Labrador housing. And anyways, I have educated my grandkids. They're only 4 and 5 years old. I have educated them on the dangers of needles on the ground, crack pipes on the ground, things like this. And anyways, walked and stumbled upon these 2 garbage bags. And Paddy, there's nothing in them, only there's garbage in there, there's needles, there's crack pipes. And apparently the guy brought them into the community. He opened them up, and he was taking needles out of it. He was taking crack pipes out of it for his own use, I would imagine. But, I mean, it's ridiculous.
So are you saying that... Just hold on, Kimberly. Are you saying that somebody came into your neighbourhood from outside your neighbourhood with a garbage bag full of crack pipes and needles?
Yes, sir. That's what I was told. I was told by someone who witnessed it. And apparently they made a call to the city because of what was going on there. There was a girl had a conversation with him, and she basically threatened him and told him, don't come in our community and do this. And he had like all of this green stuff running out of his nose, apparently. And he was just messed up guy. I mean, I would have discreetly, and I would have contacted authorities. I wouldn't allow somebody like that to come into my neighbourhood and disrupt my neighbourhood like that. Like, our neighbourhood gets a bad name, and it shouldn't. And it's because of people coming into our neighbourhood. They're dropping needles, they're dropping crack pipes, they're doing it all. And there's very, very few houses in my neighbourhood that are involved with drugs of this nature. There's probably a lot of people smoke weed, but other than that, where I live, Paddy, it's a beautiful little spot, and people put it down on skeets in the streets. They get online, they go anonymously, and they say all these things about our neighbourhood. And you know what? Most of it is not even true. And if I were to say where my neighbourhood would still, people that are listening would say, oh no, that's a hard area, that's a bad area, this was a bad area. Apparently the police wouldn't come in here in the 70s and 80s. And now the police presence here is wonderful. I can look out my window and I can see a cop car going up the road, down the road. I can see him over parked in the community centre lot over there, just, keeping an eye on things. And it's great. Now, I did see 2 police officers down in the area where these needles were disposed of. So I don't know if somebody called the police yesterday evening and said, hey, we got to get this removed. But I did contact Newfoundland Labrador Housing, and I asked them to send out somebody in health and safety and probably have this removed. They're probably going to have to come in with suits on. It's really disgusting, Paddy.
Do you feel like telling us what neighbourhood, or you just want to leave that out, which is fine?
I can tell you what neighbourhood I'm in. I'm in Buckmaster Circle.
Okay. Buckmaster Circle's been revitalised a great deal since when I was a kid.
Buckmaster Circle is a lovely place.
Yeah. And I mean,
let's... I was in Newfoundland Labrador Housing Unit here. My grandkids in care, and my grandkids are in care for the same reason, Paddy. It's because of drug addiction. So, I have no time for this stuff going on. I like a nice, clean, healthy neighbourhood. My daughter comes in here with her son, and I like to see her able to go down to the park. I like to go to the park, take my grandkids down to the park, and they're so aware of everything. And they're only 4 and 5 years old, and they know what a needle looks like. They know what a crack pipe looks like. Don't touch it. Yes, honey. Yeah. But yeah, Buckmaster Circle, nothing wrong with it.
No, I agree. And look, let's get this out of the way. You can indeed see more of this type of intravenous drug use and discarding of needles in some impoverished neighborhoods, but let's be honest, there are plenty of spots in this province and in this city in particular where you can see needles discarded in places that are middle class, upper middle class neighborhoods. So let's just not pretend this is just a poverty issue, because it's not.
Anywhere and everywhere.
Oh, sure.
I'm after seeing, I don't have a car right now. I go on the bus, so I go into different places and I see it. And I'm like, my God, this is sad. But what was done down here yesterday evening, that was uncalled for. That was ridiculous. No need of it.
Yeah, and I don't even know what would motivate somebody to bring a garbage bag worth of whatever to someone else's neighbourhood when there's on the way there probably a garbage can that he could have put the bag in. Yeah.
My question would be, where did he get it? Where did he find it? Where did he get it? Where did it come from? Did it come from down on Lamarchin Road somewhere? Did it come from down on Ricketts Road somewhere? Pennywell Road? It come from a drug house, obviously, because there's a lot of needles. And I kind of mucked through it with a stick to see if I could find some papers with an address or something on it, and I couldn't find nothing.
Yeah, and best idea is just get the city to come collect it before a child or a dog or whoever or whatever the case may be. Okay.
I know of at least 8 kids that play out in the back area of where I found this, and they ride their bikes, and they go down there pretty fast on their bikes. So if they're riding down there fast and they don't see it, they're going to skid into it, fall into it. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
And I've made residents up here aware of it, watch your grandkids, watch your kids.
I appreciate you letting us know about it, Kimberly. Thanks a lot.
Not a problem. Thank you, Patty. Thanks for your time.
My pleasure. Bye-bye. And you hear these stories, we've had Tom on from the Hub, where for some reason people think that the front or the side of the Hub is a spot to discard garbage, and including needles and crack pipes and all the rest of it. Look, it's a big problem. People share pictures of different pockets of the city where they're coming upon needles. I've encountered them, and not in places where you think, well, that's a bad neighborhood. It's not that long ago going around Kent's Pond, which is in the middle of pretty good neighborhood, and there it was, right there on the ground, 5 or 6 needles, and I wasn't going to call the city to get rid of them because it's a pretty active walking path up there, so I just used the end of my coat and picked them up and flicked them in the garbage. But man, oh man, it's just absolutely everywhere. And we do know, look, it's painfully obvious that if you're in the throes of addiction, intravenous drug use, you're probably making some pretty terrible decisions. right? Including what you do once you're done with your needle. It's remarkable stuff. And it's scary too. Because, I mean, how often do people go in those areas? Just pick a walking trail or pick an area. You go up there with your dog who might be well in front of you on leash, or you go up there with your kids who are a little bit excited to run around the corner so they get closer to see the ducks. And they find it. They encounter it. Because not every little kid is the wherewithal to be even told, okay, this is dangerous, don't touch that. You know what kids are like. Anyway, how are we doing out there this morning, Dave? Let's get her going. One more time, the numbers. If you're in and around town, 709-273-5211. Elsewhere, toll-free long distance, 1-888-590-VOCM, which is 8626. We're taking a break and then we're coming back.
You're listening to a rebroadcast of VOCM Open Line. Have your say by calling 709-273-5211 or 1-888-590-8626 and listen live weekday mornings at 9 a.m.
Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 1. Oral, you're on the air.
Hi, Paddy. How are you?
Not too bad, I suppose, you?
It's been a long while, Paddy, since I spoke to you.
Welcome back.
Now, I'm going to be up front with you. I got 3 or 4 topics, but I'm not going to keep it long.
Okay.
Anyway, one topic is a very topic that I'll never understand. I went down to the hospital. I had to wait 9 hours to get 2 Ativan. Now, in the meantime, waiting on 9 hours for 2 Ativan, I had a bad anxiety attack. And in the meantime, I had to tell them all about my childhood days. I got very personal and everything, right? And I was embarrassed. And another one I'd like to talk about too. I can relate to that girl who was just on about the needles and that around the city and that. They're all up where I live at too. They're everywhere. You know, you should clean it all up. You don't get rid of it all. But this hospital wait, and just for 2 blocks, because I'm getting a CAT scan done next month. Hear me, Paddy?
Yeah, I can hear you. So you had to go to emergency to simply get 2 Ativans?
Yes, because I couldn't. What happened, I'll be honest with you, I was out west, out in Alberta for 20 years. I had 2 bad home invasions, and I got hit with a hammer. My brain is damaged, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the only saving grace is 2 Ativan. But what I didn't have to say was humiliating. What happened to me as a kid, and I was crying like a little 2-year-old, and I don't know. I'm just humiliated. And then when you got diabetes, when you got to go to the bathroom, you got to go right away. You can't hold on for 2 seconds, Paddy, right?
Okay.
And so I said to because my lady friend, her birthday today, I said to her, I got to go to the bathroom first. So now I went and I asked the doctor and I go to the bathroom. He said, "Don't look at me. I'm not. I don't do nothing like." So I asked security. He said, "The underneath his breath." He said, "F off, whatever." Right? You know what I mean? Under his breath. Like I was listening here, man. Please let me use the bathroom. You know what I mean? I was humiliated, Paddy. And then you got about 10 or 15 or 50 people looking at you. I don't know. I guess this new premium now, he might do something about it all.
Well, I mean, that's an interesting way to put it and an interesting point. My question would be, do we really think that there are a bunch of stones left to be overturned to try to figure out how to improve the system? And if there are, let's do it. Look, I don't care who the premier is or what party's in power. If people have ideas to make things better, I'm in. I'm completely and fully in, especially when it comes to something like healthcare, because healthcare, thankfully, has not been a political hot potato. I mean, it doesn't matter who you voted for. At some point into the future, you might have to interact with the healthcare system. So you can only hope there's no partisanship in healthcare, and nor should there be. You know, we will indeed see some focus on areas where the PCs may have had some electoral success to try to improve the lot in life. Fair enough. But I'd really like to know exactly what the plan is, whether it be to reduce our reliance on travel nurses or to reopen a 24-hour emergency room at Whitburn or to have more people working in the system in whatever discipline. Like, I just don't know what the plan is. If it's a plan that's going to work, hey, count me in. I'm all in.
And Patty, I just wanted to take up about 10 seconds of your time. I got COPD, anxiety, depression, diabetes. I got it all. I was sick for a whole year, and thank God that's my prayer. I'm up now getting around. So we had this agency and the support workers, they call them, right? We had one here for a whole month, and I particularly told the girl when she first came in the door that we smoked cigarettes, and the girl had acute stroke. And you'll be talking, Paddy, when you talk about training, my God, I had to get up and I had to do it all myself. You know what I'm saying? I had to do it. I had to help the girl myself. The girl that came in had no training at all. Like, she was thrown around in the bed, stuff like that. Like, you know what I mean? So now, instead of being gentle, right?
Okay.
Right. So that's my other topic. And it was nice talking, you know, Paddy. But I'll tell you what now. I'm trying to get a dresser or a bed off home. I've been trying 3 years now off. What's that? Home again, is it?
Yep. The furniture bank.
And yeah, and I tried that. I tried 3 years ago off the army. I still haven't heard back from them. But
well,
I'm the bike man, Paddy. I'm the bike man. Remember that guy you ever do?
Yeah, I do. I never spoke with him, but I do remember and know what you're talking about. We could probably try to help you get a dresser.
Be some nice, Paddy. You make my day. Paddy, I'm glad to talk to you. I waited over a year to talk to you, bye.
Well, no problem. Happy to have you on. And I'll make a couple of calls here this afternoon, see if I can put my hands on a dresser. And if and when I do, I'll just call you back and let you know.
God love you, Paddy. Have a nice day, and thank you for the time to let me be on the radio.
My pleasure. Take care. Bye-bye.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, there's stuff like that. Look, you know, organizations like the Home Again, the Furniture Bank, they're pretty important stuff, pretty important compliment to the community. And I mean, I'll make a couple of calls. I'm pretty sure I can find a dresser here this afternoon. But if you've got one and you'd like to find a home for it, then you know where we can deliver it or get it delivered. I don't have a truck anymore, so I'll have to sort that out. All right, let's check in on the Twitter box. We're VOCM Open Line. You know what to do. Follow us there. Oh, a couple of concerned emailers regarding things about pending legislation that we don't really know a whole lot about. So we're just kind of planted the seed here this morning, whether it be about some legislation associated with criminal justice. You know, there will be the tough on crime commentary that we hear, and I get where that's coming from. The public safety feels compromised. People don't feel as safe as they used to. And all I said about it is that the devil will be in the details. We could be told harsher sentences, but for things like what? And what does harsher mean? And a reverse onus on bail, which is a good idea, which we already do here in this province on a couple of things, including domestic violence. And again, one of the questions being asked is whether or not it will actually pass the smell test. Because when it was tried back in 2011, when then Prime Minister Harper put forward legislation that saw some pretty serious things being taken on, like consecutive sentences. Remember, for folks who committed more than one murder, they were talking about making it parole ineligibility for 150 years. People like the sounds of that, or at least some people do anyway. But the question that was being asked, and was asked at that time, is whether or not it would be deemed to be inside the parameters of the Constitution. And the Supreme Court of Canada at the time said no. They said they would not be allowed to move forward with that particular piece of legislation. So that's the only question. You can tell me harsh sentences and tough on crime and jail not bail, all those types. Fair enough. But actual details so that they can have a question or a conversation about specifics and whether or not the legal community, civil rights groups and otherwise, and the Supreme Court of Canada, because that'll be where it gets its final adjudication. It won't be in the House of Commons. It'll get one step of it, but this eventually, if it goes down a similar path to the Harper legislation in 2011, that's where it's going to end up. Same thing when we talk about the border security legislation that's coming. We don't really know what's going to be entailed there, on top of the $1.3 billion already spent to hire more Border Patrol officers and drones and helicopters and all the things that we've already understood. And then I make this crack, and it gets some of the Trump guys really uptight, is, look, sharing border responsibility has long been part of it. But when, of course, we've been duped by this national security business regarding fentanyl coming from Canada versus Mexico or anywhere else, the prime concern, although shared responsibility is a thing, no question, but the prime concern and focus for Canadian border security will be to protect Canadians from things like guns and drugs and undocumented migrants and what have you coming into the country. Same thing would go for the Americans. Their prime responsibility would keep the set of aforementioned issues out of their country. So how all of a sudden this has led to what is now this tariff-based trade war, I just don't know why we're all not collectively thinking that it's ridiculous. I mean, it just quite simply is. Now they're finding out the hard way down south that they're actually dropping the tariffs on things that cannot be naturally grown, mined, or produced in the United States. Makes sense, right? But now the big question will be, what's that going to mean into the long term? Same thing with reciprocal tariffs that were put forward by this country. Prices go up, and then we're all going to pretend that prices come down. Look, how real is that? Or the possibility or the potential for prices to get rolled back? Just pick a couple of crops. I don't know, coffee and bananas and avocados, like we mentioned off the top of the program. When there's a tariff placed on them, paid for by the importer and passed along for the most part to the American consumer, up go the profits for these companies. All of a sudden we think that they're going to, through some form of altruism, say that, okay, we're going to roll the prices back down all the way to reflect the removal of a tariff. Boy, it'll be the first time. Anyway, let's check it out on Twitter. You know what to do. We're VOCM Open Line. Email address is openline@vocm.com. Our favorite is when you join us live on the program. You'll get the opportunity during this break. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Just in relation to a very important, albeit traumatic email that I just read. And I get these questions every now and then, and these come from victims, or better said, survivors of the evil that was perpetrated on them at Mount Cashel. Is when can they anticipate the next wave of money? I have no idea, number one. In addition to that, and of course, I don't think that anybody begrudges compensation to those who were the survivors of the violence, sexual and otherwise, at Mount Cashel. But I think we're also going to have to broach the question about how that pot of money is going to be further fueled. When all the properties belonging to the Roman Catholic Episcopal Corporation were sold out, churches and parish halls and land and otherwise, is they raised, I'm just going to use round numbers because I can't remember the exact number right now, but somewhere around $50 million. The number we're told that's going to be the total compensation paid is around $140 million. So, or $110 million maybe. So we're well away from it. So it begs the question. If the Roman Catholic Episcopal Corporation is now financially insolvent, then where does the rest of the money come from? You would imagine it comes from the provincial government. I haven't heard anybody, whether it be the past Liberal government, who I guess are still the government until there's a swearing in of the new incoming PC government, haven't heard them mention it, nor do I think it was discussed in any form or fashion on the campaign trail. But it's an important question to ask, like when and who's going to pay that bill? I don't know if there's another entity out there other than the province. We did hear that there was some possibility that insurance could cover some of the gap, but doesn't look like that's going to be the case either. So I say to these emailers when they write me that I don't know, but I'll bring it up to see if we can't get some conversation going about it. So I do think it's going to be, the province, the taxpayers that are going to pay that money. I have no real problem with that, but I think it's something we deserve an answer to as to how that's going to work. That's all. And then, man, oh man, do we ever get peppered when there's anything to do with the pending referendum regarding the Upper Churchill and Gull Island and the transmission associated with. I don't know how and why any of these questions are a problem. The number one question is, what are we actually asking people? Which I think is an important note when we go to a referendum, because you'll be voting on a question. And secondly, are we saying that now with an incoming government that we're just simply going to stop negotiating on the pathway to potential definitive agreements, contracts? Or will the referendum be after there's the independent review, so that there's more maybe information to discern and digest? Will it be when the contracts are back in hand and the possibility for pen to meet paper and to move forward formal agreements? I don't know. But I'm also completely unsure as to why they're not fair questions. I don't even know why there wasn't more in those formal questions during the campaign itself. Because, look, the concept of independent review, I don't know if there's anybody out there. I mean, folks who really desperately want to see this get done, they might be saying, well, the review is going to take so much time that we'll get through April and da-da-da-da-da. Look, I don't know what the chances are of Hydro-Quebec or the province of Quebec walking away if there's not a timeline or a deadline hit in April, which would see benefits retroactive to the 1st of January of this year. I don't know what their intentions would be on that front. But what we do know, just based on everything that you see, read, and hear, is the coalition to Avenir, Legault's government, they're done. They're cooked. Their poll numbers are unbelievably low. And you know me, I only take the polls with a grain of salt. But when they're as low as they are, I mean, they're single digits. There's no coming back from single digits, right? And that's even after the announcement, which has been portrayed as very good news in the province of Quebec by Legault, Sabia, and others. So they're gone. The Bloc Québécois have been ripping this deal to shreds, saying it's terrible for Quebec, terrible for Hydro-Quebec. So what's the likelihood of them being even a willing dance partner after this next order of business takes place on whatever timelines we simply do not know? And I'm not suggesting that any of that's good or bad. I think it's just kind of factual. Is Legault's government out really does mean that there's going to be right back to the drawing board. By the sounds of it, don't take it from me, take it from the Bloc Québécois themselves. They've said pretty much exactly that. They have zero interest in this particular MOU, zero interest in the negotiations based on the contents of the MOU. And again, we really do indeed, look, we have to be very, very mindful and careful and take our time, as people have rightfully pointed to, because there's just too much on the line here. It has decades-long impact, as we all understand. But I really do think, now that we've got election results in the rearview mirror, let's get down to the brass tacks and have a better understanding of exactly what we're talking about, exactly what the path looks like. For some people, it's, let's just stop negotiating, period. There's plenty of people out there listening simply want to torn up. No doubt about it. I mean, I hear it all the time, which is one of the reasons why I think a referendum at this stage, asking who knows what of who knows who, is probably not the best spend of time or money. Because just think about it, the conversations that you have and I have, the social media threads that we see, is there is a built-in distrust of Quebec. There just is. We all know it, and it's very prevalent. So what's the likelihood, if you don't trust the Quebecers, which they do not deserve to be trusted at this moment, given what's happened since 1969 to today at the Upper Churchill, there's a reason why people feel that way. And if and when that's the case, and it is, what's the likelihood of anyone who doesn't trust Quebec to vote yes on whatever it is, whatever the question might be? I think it's the same thing when we talk about the politics of it. Now, Mr. Wakeham, to his credit, has said he's going to try to take this conversation out of the political arena, which might be some cockeyed optimism because it is firmly entrenched in the political arena for obvious reasons. We just had the then party in power, the Liberals, make it a linchpin in their party platform in the most recent election. So how you get politics out of this is anybody's guess. I don't know how that gets achieved, but he's going to try to do it, and I guess it'd be nice to, in the future, once the government is sworn in, and once we have a cabinet to consider and all the issues surrounding it, and then maybe some more detailed plans to follow through with some of the pledges made on the campaign trail, it'd be great to have Premier Designate Wakeham on the program to dig into some of this stuff. And, I get told fairly often is that we have to give them time. Look, we have to give them time to be able to achieve or to execute some of the plans. Of course we do. Because if it was as simple as flipping a switch and all of a sudden healthcare is fixed in full, if it was as easy as flipping a switch and 75% of the topsides work abated order was being done wherever in this province, then it would be done. But these are complicated matters. So to that end, you talk about giving people a chance. I agree with that. But that doesn't mean that at the starting point, there isn't enough in the way of details that have been further fleshed out so that we can have a basic understanding of exactly what we're doing, exactly the roadmap to get there, because that's kind of lost in the headlines of campaigning. It's a promise with very little detail. And this is not about Tony Wakeham or the PCs. This is about every politician and every party. They all behave in very similar fashion when campaigning. But so time to actually achieve, I understand, and I agree. You're right. But time to come forward with a little bit more meat on the bone, I don't think we have time in a variety of fronts. So that's all I would be asking. I think, most would be asking the exact same question, in addition to where's all the money coming from. All right, final check-in on the Twitter before the newscast. We're VOCM Open Line. Follow us there. Email address is openline@vocm.com. This morning, I know people are catching their breath after what's been a very weird, long political year of 2025 and 3 elections, what have you. But just that general reminder, it needn't be directly political conversations that we can have on this program. We can talk about whatever you like. Like the conversation last week that got the most traction and feedback just in my email inbox, what to feed a squirrel. So I think that paints the picture very clearly that we can talk about whatever you like. And let's do it right after the news. Don't go away.
The Tim Powers Show. Join the conversation weekday afternoons at 4 p.m. on your VOCM.
Welcome back. Let's go to line number 2. Paul, you're on the air.
Thought I'd change the subject on you today.
Sure.
I'm sure you heard last week the death of Ace Frehley from Kiss.
Yep.
I don't know if you mentioned in your preamble that at all since last week. I know it's not top news, maybe for Newfoundland, but that's one of the guys I grew up with, Patty. Ace Frehley, Kiss, the Blondies, the Meatloafs, the Bruce Springsteens. Can I just get your take on that, Patty?
On the take of his passing?
Ace Frehley.
Yeah, well, I mean, I was a Kiss fan. I've seen Kisses a couple of times. Saw them in costume in Hamilton one time before they started to play without costume. Saw them at the Salmon Festival as well when they were back in their full regalia. I actually watched some of that concert side stage with Shannon Tweed. She invited me because we had her on Nightline that week before the concert out in Grand.
Wow.
Yeah, so that was pretty cool. Yeah, I mean, Frehley, whether it be Frehley's Comets was one of his standalone bands outside of Kiss, because he left the group. I think he was the original lead in 73, left in 82, did a couple things on his own, he eventually rejoined the band. But he had a pretty interesting quality. He certainly epitomized the spaceman as it came to playing lead for a band like Kiss. So, yeah, sad news. I think he was only like 74, right?
74, yeah, from
Okay.
the accident. He hit his head or something. He fell down or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, he left the group back in 80, 81. He started his own band, Ace Frehley and the Comets.
Yep.
And that, yeah, but they had a falling out, Patty. But that's with these groups like that. I mean, it's not uncommon. And Peter Criss the same way. I've heard negativity about Ace Frehley from Gene and Paul over the years, bad things, you know. But like I say, they got back together in '96 for about 4 years, and then they dismantled again. But they were supposed to have a final concert there a couple of months ago, and he refused to do it at that time. And that's too bad, you know. I know they're already inducted into the Hall of Fame. I know they all showed up for that. I saw that episode, but yeah, that's too bad. But like I say, I mean, age is a thing, Patty. I mean, he wasn't young. He was 74, but other than that, I think he was in pretty good health, you know. And like I say, you don't know what to expect from day to day on the news. You know, now I heard lately Dolly Parton wasn't too well either. Did you hear anything about that, Patty?
I have not heard anything about that, to be honest.
It was on YouTube, so whether or not that's true or not, you don't know what to take on YouTube, right?
Oh, Dave Williams just whispered in my ear that Dolly Parton's sister said that she's okay, which is good news.
Oh, okay. I was half afraid she's on a death because you listen to YouTube, Patty, and you don't know what to believe.
Well,
so there's one thing comes on there every day, and it'll say celebrities who died today, and there are a couple last month or so. I said, look, Michael J. Fox passed away, and it wasn't true at all.
Yeah.
How did they even allow that on YouTube? There must be somebody can take that off. I guess I can't figure it. You watch advice to anyone. You're watching YouTube. Take it with a grain of salt.
Yeah, it's becoming a lot more difficult to find out exactly what is real and something that is absolutely demonstrably false. So anyway, yeah, I'm really struggling with it at this point. Yeah,
like what had happened to Easter last week, I had to double check just to be sure, you know, but 'cause you don't know what to think. But I just thought I'd bring that up this morning, Patty. It's a sad news, but that's it. Life goes on. But like I said, that's the people I grew up with, the Kisses and the Meatloafs and the Blondies of the world, you know. I'll tell you how old I'm getting.
Yeah, listen, us too. This is apropos of nothing, but when living in Alberta, some of my new buddies that I met out there, they were huge Kiss fans, and they stuck me with the nickname that has stuck pretty solid since then, Strutter. Well, a great Kiss tune. Anyway.
Oh, very good. All right, Patty.
Thanks a lot.
For your time, everybody.
Appreciate your time, Paul. All the best. Bye-bye. Yeah, that was pretty great. Greg Smith was producing Nightline with me. We had Shannon Tweed on, of course, from this province and married to Gene Simmons, talking about her career, but then, of course, the fact that Kiss was coming was also cool. And she invited me to come backstage, meet the band. And I watched a bit of Kiss perform side stage with Shannon Tweed. What? Pretty wild stuff. And talk about, you know, whether or not it's true that someone is either in ill health or has passed away. You go back to Mark Twain. So what was it that he said? The report of my death was an exaggeration, which people have used wide and far since. We've heard mention of the NSO here already this morning. We'll speak with Maria Conkey with the Cathedral Basilica Foundation. You know, things like the NSO performing at the Basilica. Not sure what we're going to talk about right now, but we're going to speak with the NSO Marketing and Development Manager on line number 1. That's Maria Penny. Good morning, Maria. You're on the air.
Good morning, Patty. How are you?
Great today. How about you?
I'm great, thank you. I'm calling in today to chat about our two really fun Halloween concerts we have coming up at the Arts and Culture Center this weekend.
Let's do it.
Excellent. So the first one is on Friday evening at 7:30. That's at the Arts and Culture here in St. John's. It's called Silver Screens. So we're going to be playing all of your favorite Halloween horror music. All the classics, think The Shining, Halloween, Beetlejuice, Scream, anything you can think of. It's definitely going to be played at our concert. And then we have a really special concert on Saturday, October 25th. It's a matinee. It's one of the first ones we've done in a while. So this is going to be for all the kids out there at 3 p.m. at the Arts and Culture Center, and we're partnering with Best Kind Productions for the Paranormal Popcorn Patrol. It's a matinee adventure for audiences of all ages. Tickets are just $15 for that concert, and we're going to be doing music from The Nightmare Before Christmas and Jaws, and the Best Kind Productions has created a whole a play in amongst all the concert music that the orchestra will be presenting. And before the concert, on the upper concourse, we're going to have a little Halloween party. So there's going to be a costume contest. Rocketeer Treats is coming. And our friends from Sci-Fi on the Rock have some spooky visitors for photos.
It's always fun to do some theme-related action, but of course, when you talk about a matinee, most music associated with Halloween is spooky and scary and stuff. So what can the kids expect insofar as the fun held by little goblins and ghouls over the Halloween?
Oh, there's going to be lots of fun at the Popcorn Patrol. So all the kids from Best Kind Productions have a great little storyline. They're traveling to the Movieplex to use the power of music to rid the Arts and Culture Center of the haunted ghosts that are happening.
It's interesting you mentioned Jaws because it's probably one of the more haunting soundtracks, certainly with the dun, 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 dun. Anyway, that's really meant nothing either. So are we taking tunes directly from some of the Halloween classics like Shine or Nightmare on Elm Street or stuff? Is that what people can anticipate?
Yes, you can hear all the theme music. Literally, you think of it, the Addams Family, da-da-da-da. Anything you can think of, these classics, they're going to be performed by the orchestra. So really bringing your favorite Halloween movie music to life. Are members of the orchestra going to be donning costumes for the performance? Of course they are. They get excited every year, and there's always a competition in amongst the orchestra who's got the best costume. Quick question about the orchestra itself. So we know long-time conductor Mark David has left. New conductor came in, Martin McDonald. Just a quick reflection on Mark David's contribution to the NSO and then what it looks like under the new leadership of Mr. McDonald. Yeah, so Mark David has left a wonderful legacy. We spent all last year celebrating his over 30 years with the orchestra. This year we welcomed Simon Rivard, who is our music director, along with Martin McDonald, who's our principal pops conductor, and these two have worked together from the legacy that Mark has built, and we're really powering forward into a new kind of season of music. This is a bit of a mercurial question, but, people might view the conductor, if they're just, casual fans of this type of symphonic orchestra or music, but the conductor is not just the coach or the manager or the conductor for live performances and for rehearsals, but there's a lot to what goes on, what David represents insofar as talent being part of the NSO, to stick with it long term, what have you. So it's a bit bigger than simply having the wand in hand when people go to the Arts and Culture Centre. You're absolutely right, Patty. The music director and the conductor, they really curate what everyone's listening to. They put so much thought and care in behind all the pieces that are selected and curate the experience for the orchestra. They're mentoring people. They're really part of our community. They're out at our schools chatting with all the children. The things they do, it's amazing. Yeah, a good friend of mine is first trumpet. Okay, give the details one more time, the where, the whens, what people need to do to secure a ticket for these upcoming Halloween-related concerts. All right, so we have on Friday, October 24th at 7:30 p.m. at the Arts and Culture Center. That is our Halloween horror music called Silver Screens. And then our matinee at 3 p.m. on Saturday, October 25th at the Arts and Culture Center. That's for the $15 really family-oriented kids show. And tickets are both available at the Arts and Culture Center box office. So online, in person, over the phone, Arts and Culture Center box office. Appreciate your time. Break a leg. Thank you so much, Patty. Bye.
Bye-bye. Maria Penny is the Marketing and Development Manager with the Newfoundland Symphony Orchestra. Okay, let's get our final break in the morning. When we come back, still plenty of time for you. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Interesting question posed by emailer once again. Generally some pretty good stuff in there. He says, hi Patty, hello. Can you fill me in on what I'm missing in regards to the continuous comments I hear about our distrust with Quebec? It's a good question. Now, some of it might be perceived, some of it might be legit, some of it might absolutely be exaggerated. But I think it's fair to say that right across the country, there are questions about the province of Quebec. You know, as a distinct society, being Francophone Quebecers, what have you. And it's not just about 1969 and the Upper Churchill in this province, I don't think. I mean, things like the continuous and ongoing threats of separation. I think that's sat in an uneasy position with many people in the country, even though it looks like we're going to entertain that conversation in the province of Alberta. And we could talk about that because, man, oh man. But it's also things like equalization. And people do, right across the country, think that Quebec gets treated in a positive fashion unfairly when compared to the rest of the country with the spread out of equalization payments. They're not wrong. You know, equalization absolutely needs to be addressed. Now, the formula used, and people like to blame one party or another about equalization, but the equalization formula that's in place now has been in place for quite a long time. Which is why when, like, for instance, when Jason Kenney was the Premier of Alberta, it was so disingenuous and hypocritical for him to be latching onto that, because he was one of the senior cabinet ministers in the Harper government when this exact equalization formula was created and adopted and implemented, and then the Liberals, of course, rubber stamped it. I think I'm right in saying there is court challenges now to equalization. This province was one of the instigators of it. A couple of others have signed on. What the status of that is, I have no idea. But I think there's a variety of reasons why Quebec becomes part of that type of conversation. Separation threats, equalization, the Upper Churchill, the whole distinct society, some of the games that they play legally and otherwise regarding language. Then you add into another specific regarding this province is a continuous pathetic, ridiculous approach that they take to the Labrador border, which can manifest itself into what some people worry can be a resource grab, because they don't recognize the border. I mean, they don't even have it appropriately lined up or lined out inside their own curriculum in schools and other government documents they continue to put forward, even though we know this has been settled many, many, many times. And maybe for some people's emotional reaction, maybe that should be part of this contract too, is to finally acknowledge what was done in 1927 at the Privy Council level, what was once again reiterated in 1982 when we drafted and adopted the Constitution, the Charter, is maybe that can be part of this conversation, because I think there's a variety of reasons why Quebec gets tossed into that type of discussion. Let's see here. Let's go to line number one. Gerald, you're on the air.
Morning, Paddy.
Morning.
I think this MOU,
yeah,
I think that's dead in the water.
You might be right.
Yeah, you covered it there about the election in Quebec, and I to me, it seemed it makes this thing moot. It's gone. And frankly, I would think we'd be well advised for us fellas here to simply put this aside. This MOU business, it's not these deals aren't going anywhere. Time works in our favour as we go down the road toward that Churchill Falls agreement. And I think we should concentrate on the troubles we have now at the present, and there are lots of them. Economic troubles of the first magnitude. Anyway, just
yeah, the time issue is real, I suppose. In no sense of pretending it's not. But, you know, it is also interesting to me that we spent decades and copious amounts of millions of dollars to challenge the 1969 contract in the courts. And one of the features of the... Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, go on.
No, you can finish your thought. Go ahead.
When that project was undertaken at that time, as I think I said to you, Quebec took an enormous risk by putting their eggs in another province, and thereby they were very prudent and diligent. Knowing the risks that they could encounter, they sewed up, they crossed every T and dotted every I in that contract. That contract is bulletproof. our taking it, I remember when we were taking it, of course, I remember saying to myself, what a waste of time and money. They were prudent and they did due diligence on it. But that's not going anywhere.
And there's probably another reason why.
In the towns and so on. And as a matter of fact, Paddy, when that, just for your interest, when that at that time you could buy fuel oil here in this province for 17 cents a gallon. When that was the economics at the time. Oil was pretty well free. So to give you an idea of the price, you know.
Which is part of the reason why there wasn't that foresight as to what might happen with energy prices, which of course exploded since 1969.
If I didn't interrupt you, pardon me, Quebec had that deal and set on it, and they locked into the explosion in oil prices. So the asset they had the 50-year, whatever it was, 60-year option on, probably went up in value 10 times. It wasn't something they did or didn't do. It was presented to them, and they took full advantage of it. And for Quebec to take, Quebec looked after Quebec's interest, and that's what they've done. They had no reason to say, well, I don't trust Quebec because they're not fair or something. Trust has nothing to do with it. This is pure economics. They have their problems, we have ours. And we had something. We had something similar when we encountered oil off here, and we had struck a bonanza, and money gushed in. We didn't rush to share that with anyone else. We had the same good fortune to hit oil, and money gushed into our government. By the way, for all that money came in, what do we have to show for it now? That's you.
Yeah, we may be caught up on some infrastructure deficits that the province has had, but yeah, we're talking somewhat $30-odd billion later. Here we are.
Yeah. Yeah. What do you think is our biggest accomplishment from it? You know, I mean, we got a prison that's a shame in all of us. We don't have a school for the deaf. Our roads are in disrepair. And we could go on and on. After all this money, I ask you, where did the money go? I want to say, Paddy, we have lots of problems on our but we have to address right now. Muskrat Falls, or not the other one, but Churchill is not going anywhere. That's an enormous asset that we have, and probably, if we were fair people, when the fruits of that come through, that should go to the people 20 years' time, who we've passed on an enormous amount of debt to. You know, that's my thoughts anyway.
Well, I'm glad you shared them. You've had the last word. We're almost up against the clock here, Gerald.
Yep.
Appreciate your time. Thank you.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye. Yeah, and that's one facet of the conversation that probably deserves more discourse too, is exactly what 41 means and exactly what we think we can achieve if we just punted this MOU and walked away from the negotiations and simply waited, and what that might look like, not only for the potential upside or benefit, but what it might also bring insofar as risk into the future. But we don't really know because we don't really talk about it. All right, let's check in on the Twitter for the final time of the morning. Or VOCM Open Line, follow us there. Email is openline@vocm.com, and we will indeed pick up this conversation again tomorrow morning, right here on VOCM and Big Land FM's Open Line. On behalf of the producer, David Williams, I'm your host, Paddy Daly. Have yourself a safe, fun, happy day. We'll talk in the morning. Go Jays. Bye-bye.